At E&S, we're proud to stock Westinghouse ovens, cooktops, fridges and dishwashers, and our staff are Westinghouse experts. And we won't be beaten on price. So visit one of our 9 showrooms today or shop online and get the E&S feeling with Westinghouse.
Kogan Mobile. Make the switch and save 50% off all 365-day plans. Shopping for a Kluger? Visit 3 great Toyota locations today. Berwick, Pakenham and Cranbourne Toyota.
Dwayne's World with Dwayne Russell.
Hello and welcome to Dwayne's World. Great to have your company wherever you might be listening. It's Midday Madness time. You call, you get on. That's the Midday Madness promise. And the number is 1300 736 736. That's the open line. Anything you'd like to discuss in the world of sport, jump on now. Next couple of hours are yours. We'll talk to Andrew Gaze later in the program about all things basketball. Simon Hill is also going to join us. We'll talk to Amit Baines about a heap of footy issues. The Dogs are flying at the moment. Just missed out last year. So Amit Baines to join us a little bit later on. So Andrew Gaze, Simon Hill, but your calls straight up, 1300 736 736, the open line number, brought to us by Werribee Kia, and they are open for business. If you drop down and see them, they'd love to take you for a drive, a test drive in one of their demos. David, Janan, Aid, Jim, they're all down there, so tell them we sent you. A couple of things we are going to get to at some stage. In fact, let's just open the lines with a quick one. Which state gets the 5th test if Perth can't host it? Fairly simple question, because that is a chance to happen. I'm not sure if you heard the interview with Western Australian Cricket Association CEO Christina Matthews on this program yesterday, or you've read the reports. The latest report in the West Australian that I read last night was that even the English wives and girlfriends might not be able to travel to Perth. There's all different logistical issues right now. So who gets it? Who would get it? Is it Melbourne gets a second test this summer, a day-night test, or does Tassie get it because they are the state next in line? 1300 736 736, or if you've got a thought on the text, 0433 98 11 16, that text machine for Tempur, TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. The great thing about Melbourne, and yeah, okay, well, I live in Victoria, but the great thing about Victoria and Melbourne is Melburnians go to sport for the event, not simply for the sport itself. Everyone floods to the Spring Carnival when we can, and quite a few don't see a horse run. It's just the event. They love the event. I think the day-night test event for Melbourne would be awesome. It would be unbelievable. When you think about the day-night test, if it was the 5th test, it would essentially be crossing over with the Australian Open tennis as well. So you could walk across the walkway and actually go to both. We go to the Australian Open tennis anyway to wander the back courts and have a feast and a Heineken and watch a band and not even see any of the world's top 10. Most people don't even get on to centre court. Melburnians just love going to events like the tennis and the Spring Carnival. Even the NBL. We go to the NBL because it's a circus. When you don't know all the players, new imports come every year, but your kids have fun. And it's a couple of hours of action, and it's fun, and it's not that expensive. Big Bash, likewise, 3 hours of entertainment, and you don't even remember a couple of days later sometimes or care who won. You just have a great night with your family. F1 GP, it's the atmosphere for the F1 GP. It's the noise. You might not watch another Formula One race all season, but the F1 is an event that blows your senses. It blows your ears, and it distorts your eyes at times. So, would you go to a second test in Melbourne? Obviously, we've got the Boxing Day test coming up, but if we had the 5th test as well, 1300 736 736, or is it simply Tassie should get it because they deserve it? They're the next state in line. If you're from Tassie, give me a call. I mean, in some ways, we talk about sport being about crowd maximisation, and if it's about crowd maximisation, then the MCG seems an obvious choice, but maybe many of those that would go to the 5th test, as it would be, would have already have been to the Boxing Day test. So it's time to give the Tassie crowd an opportunity to go. Is it an obligation to just spread the love that Cricket Australia have? I'll tell you what, though, as a day-night spectacle, it will be awesome at the MCG. A couple of your texts coming through. Give it to the Northern Territory. Tasmania should get the 5th test. Keep them coming. 0433 98 11 16, the text machine for Tempur. But it's Talkback Radio. Rather have a chat to you, and we've got a few things to give away as well. Got a few Yarra Bend driving range vouchers to give away. Play, practice, enjoy. Yarra Bend Golf is on Melbourne's doorstep. and a couple of slabs of Urban Myth No Alcohol Pale Ale, thanks to Urban Alley. You can try it this summer. David in Mernda, as we start with you. Your thoughts, David? Who should get it if Perth can't host it?
G'day, Dwayne. I reckon it could stay in Victoria, not necessarily have to be at the MCG. Why couldn't we take it down to GMHBA Stadium and actually reward a bit of the regional, rather than give it straight to Metro all the time?
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good eye-opener too for Cricket Australia, just to see, what could happen there. And potentially it could be a new Big Bash team, heading out the west there, Geelong.
I agree with you on the Big Bash team in Geelong. I think it's only a matter of time before Geelong either gets itself a Big Bash franchise, an A-League franchise, or who knows, they might even try and sneak back into the NBL. They had the old Supercats in years gone by. It's a huge sporting metropolis, David, and I live here in Geelong. So I should be saying, yes, I agree with you. But I'm not. It's a day-night test. I think the MCG, with the tennis on days 4 and 5, so the tennis will be starting on days 4 and 5 of that fifth test. I think the Melbourne Sporting Precinct with a day-night test would be unbelievably good. And I'd suggest, David, that Melbourne would love it even more and almost deserve it because Melbourne's had lockdown more than Geelong. And I think people would come for it. I reckon it'd just be such a celebration of sport. Melbourne is the capital of world sport, according to many of us. It's certainly the capital of Australian sport. And I think if you gave the MCG the day-night test to end the summer of cricket, I think it would be a beautiful ending, especially if the fifth test is still live in the series. But appreciate your call, and we'll send you down to Yarra Bend driving range on us down in Mernda. Thanks for your call, David. 1300 736 736. John in Port Augusta, your thoughts, John?
Yeah, hi, Dwayne. They used to play, I can remember when they used to play Sheffield Shield at the old Cardinia Park, Geelong, in the early 80s. I can remember that. I can remember South Australian Victoria playing the Sheffield Shield match down there years ago, in about 1980.
Oh, they have... Yeah, they do have Big Bash in Geelong, and there's a bit of A-League action these days.
Yeah, there is too, but they used to have Sheffield Shield cricket. But anyway, Dwayne, Port Adelaide, I'm a Port man. Do they need to make the grand final for credibility's sake? I mean, they've been up and about for a little while. Not easy to do, not easy to make AFL grand final, and it's really not. Preliminary finals are very hard to win. But Port have got to preliminary finals in at home preliminary finals and all the rest of it. And unfortunately, the Crow supporters say, for the rare time I'll agree with me, probably choked a couple of times and whatever else. And I mean, this is similar to 2000. The way I see it, it's similar to the early 2000s when they were missing out in the early part of the finals, and then finally saluted in 2004. Thanks, mate. Thanks for your time.
No, John, I agree with you. I think if Port don't win it in the next couple of years, either this year coming or the year after, if they don't win a flag under Ken Hinkley, if they don't win a flag in the Travis Spoke, Robbie Gray era, then I think they've blown it, blown a huge opportunity. But in saying that, I would probably say the same about the current Brisbane Lions era as well. They need to win one in this era as well. Otherwise, they've blown a couple of huge opportunities, including having a grand final in their own home state. Albert in Far North Queensland, your thoughts on where the fifth test should be, Albert? Welcome to you.
Yeah, but it can't be in Perth, Dwayne. It's got to be in Tasmania. It sort of reminds me of why would you give KOTV sole rights to the T20 World Cup? It cuts out so much of your future money with kids playing cricket. It's a ridiculous notion. It's like having the MCG for the grand final every year and saying we're in national competition.
Well, you've opened up 3 cans of worms there, Albert. So you think that Tassie just deserves it, and not more kids won't go to the test if it's in Tassie than would go to the test at the MCG. But
we are an Australian federation, and they play in the Sheffield Shield, Tasmania. They should, Melbourne, great sporting city. I know. I used to live there, but it's very immature, and it's got the hubris about it being it may be the sporting capital of the world. That doesn't mean you get every great sporting event just because that's the case. Otherwise, you'll have other cities in Australia just dropping off. We're not mature enough to have the AFL Grand Final, even though they slyly put that contract in place We're not mature enough to have it around the country to be a true national competition. If you win the right to host the AFL Grand Final, you should get it. Forget you might get $40,000 or $50,000 less people, but in the long run, I believe it's a much better business decision.
Appreciate your call, Albert. If you've got a thought on what Albert's just had to say, 1300 736 736. I'm sure people listening to this program know my thoughts on the AFL Grand Final. I am a South Australian, but I believe the MCG is the place to host the Grand Final. It's still the best stadium in Australia. I'm not a rotate the Grand Final guy. If you want to do it once every 5 years, I'm okay with that. But the competition a few years ago was in a spot of bother, and the MCG agreement helped stabilise the competition because it had money brought to the competition with that deal. And I think the AFL needed to do that deal to actually stabilise the competition. So you've got to honour that deal, I think. Now, if you can honour a deal and also get the MCG to agree to have one every 5 years interstate, then fantastic. But it is still the best arena in Australia. Adelaide Oval is fantastic. Optus Stadium is brilliant, but it still ain't the MCG. And it still doesn't have 100,000 capacity in Perth or in SA either. So a Twitter poll, over 100 votes so far as to who should host if Perth can't. 52% say Hobart, 41% say Melbourne, 2% say Sydney, 5% say other. One here on the text, I think Tasmania should get the fifth test. Haven't had one for years. But on the other hand, a day-night test in Melbourne would be great as well. Well, if you didn't hear the program yesterday, we'll head back to your calls shortly. 1300 736 736 is the number. 1300 736 736. Here is Western Australian Cricket Association CEO Christina Matthews on the hopes of keeping the test in Perth.
Well, you can only just keep hoping. There's still a lot of negotiation to be done, but, the thing is, Cricket Australia are desperate to have it here. The government would love to have it, but we know there's hurdles that got to be jumped, and we'll see what happens. Well, it's predominantly around the broadcasters and the overlay that's needed for a cricket broadcast compared to other sports. So there's things like Hawkeye, Spider-Cam that have become an essential part of a cricket broadcast, and it's working out how you get those things operating because there's a fair bit of movement through the crowd with the personnel who run those. So all sorts of things have got to work out. Can there be a pathway? Can there, when can they get into the state? All those sort of things. Well, it's not a lay down misère, that's for sure. But the one thing I can say is people are working positively towards an outcome of the test match in Perth. But, gee, we wake up over the weekend and there's a new strain, changes what the federal government's going to do. So there's something different every day that throws, another grenade into the middle of the pile, and you just got to deal with it. So until I hear the Cricket Australia CEO and our Premier coming out and saying it's all steam, all guns blazing, I'll kind of try and be a little bit more circumspect.
Western Australian Cricket Association CEO Christina Matthews on this program yesterday. There's a lot of hurdles in the way before it gets confirmed whether Western Australia can host that fifth test or not. So, who's top of the queue? Is it Melbourne or is it Tasmania? Back to your calls. Who would be the front runner to host the Perth test if you don't host it, Christina?
Oh, obviously, Tasmania put up their hand, but they put up their hand on the basis of Tim Payne sort of leading the team there. Whether they have the same level of interest, I don't know. But I would suggest, they might look at where the last two tests are played before us. But we're a long way from having a look at that at the moment.
You think Tassie's angry memo to Cricket Australia might not help their chances either?
Well, I don't think you yell at someone the way they did and then hope to get a favour in return, but we'll wait and see. Was a bit angry, wasn't it?
Christina Matthews, yesterday, Western Australian Cricket Association CEO, talking about where the test might end up if it's not in Perth. Your thoughts? 1300 736 736 is the number. And we'll give away a few Yarra Bend driving range vouchers and some slabs of Urban Myth No Alcohol Pale Ale by Urban Alley. You can try it this summer. The Twitter poll is still up. Quite a few votes up there at the moment, getting close to 200 votes. 47% say Hobart deserve it because they're the next state in line. 44% say Melbourne, 3% say Sydney, and 6% say other. A couple of texts that have come through in the meantime on the Temper text machine, TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other. I think Tasmania should get the 5th test. They haven't had one for years. But on the other hand, day-night test will be great in Melbourne as well. I think I might have read that one out earlier. Western Australian test is huge for TV. If not there, TV will demand day-night test. That may rule Tassie out. James, thanks for that. How about a date-night test on the Gold Coast? England wouldn't mind it due to having a tour game there. Another one here. I think they should have the 5th test in Tasmania, seeing as they hardly get one. Tristan from Preston Beach, WA. I think it should be at Marvel Stadium. Bit more intimate. And the light show could be better. I just think the sporting precinct would be the place to put it myself. Mark in Mentone. You there, Mark?
Yeah, mate. How you going?
Yeah, good, thanks.
Yeah, Melbourne. All day Melbourne. Look, we've missed out on so many events, and the city's been shut down. And, you know, look, we lost the last 2 grand finals, so MCG all the way. Day-night test and bring it on.
Yeah, Mark, how many people do you think that it would get capacity again for days 1, 2, 3, like it will be for days 1, 2, 3 of the Boxing Day test?
I think the actual Boxing Day will be packed. There'll be 75, 80,000 now, I reckon. And I reckon, obviously, it always tapers off a little bit on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th and 5th day. If the test's live, if it's a live game, like later in the test, I reckon, depending on the weather, of course, I reckon that there'll be a big crowd there, yeah.
Yeah, I think if that was live, if the 5th test was to decide the series, it would be massive. And it would be a beautiful place to have the decider as well. Thanks for your call. Justin in Wandon. Welcome to you, Justin.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. What do you got for us? Where should it be?
Well, it should be at the MCG because if it's in Melbourne. We can't have it at Marvel, mate, because there'll be no crowd there. No Melbourne supporters will go. No Richmond supporters will go. There'll be no one turning up, Pipe.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you can't have it at Marvel. You're spot on. I'll tell you, if you had it at Marvel, would you have the roof open?
No, I don't. Oh, look, no. You would, but you'd have it at the MCG.
Yeah, I think
you'll get 90,000 for a day-night game there.
Oh, I agree with you 100%, and especially with days 4 and 5 crossing over to days 1 and 2 of the tennis. I'm with you 100%. But again, there's a few on the text that don't agree with us. Keep your calls coming. 1300 736 736. Justin, hold the line. We've got a Yarra Bend driving range voucher coming your way as well. Play, practice, enjoy. Yarra Bend Golf is on Melbourne's doorstep. G'day, Dwayne. Love your idea about a second day-night test in Melbourne. Late January would expect the weather to be hot. After our lockdowns, it would be well-deserved. London has 2 tests every year, so why not us? If we can get it, if we can't get it, then it has to be Tassie. Cheers, Rob from Moonee Ponds. Well, it's not my idea, Rob. It's just being tossed up as it needs to be played somewhere. If Perth can't host it, and there's a lot of hurdles in the way at the moment, then it's going to have to be played somewhere. So where is the question? And that's why we've got that poll up, and that's why we're asking the question now. Come on, you bloody Victorians. You already stole our Grand Prix. Leave our day-night test alone. Jason in the Adelaide Hills. Well, you still get to keep your day-night test at the Adelaide Oval, Jason. We're just going to finish the series with one in Melbourne, which would be a groundbreaking day-night test in Melbourne. Great idea to have the 5th test in Hobart so the whole 5,000 people can attend. Let's get serious. They've never attended tests when they've had one, and it only holds 13,000. Now, it has never been full. Maybe an Ashes test against England might be a bit different, but they probably haven't done themselves any favours with their crowd numbers in the past. Nobody else had an opportunity to get the AFL Grand Final. It wasn't exactly fair. Thanks for that. Has to be the MCG night test match. Best venue in Australia for it. Simple as that. David in Frankston. Thank you, David. Whoever says Melbourne is the sporting capital of the world has obviously never been to London or New York. I think the reason why Melbourne's called the sporting capital in some respects, it's because the weighting of importance that Melburnians put on sport in comparison to all other stuff that goes on. London has got a whole lot of other stuff going on. Arts. New York's got a whole lot of other stuff going on, including a brilliant arts fraternity as well. So it's got a whole heap of other stuff, London and New York. Melbourne, what have we got? I mean, we don't have Tower Bridge, and we don't have Big Ben. We don't have a Statue of Liberty. We've got the MCG. G'day, Dwayne. Give Albert every prize you have at SEN. Someone who finally speaks some sense on this station. The entitlement of Victorians that they just deserve it is laughable. Paul from Willard. Hi, Dwayne. Paul from Muswellbrook, New South Wales. Not Marvel Stadium. Day-night test in Melbourne due to all the rain around. Who knows what it will be like then. I think the weather will be pretty good by then. So I think it will be the perfect venue. And another here. I'm a Vic, and I agree with Albert. Cheers, Rick in Ringwood North. Back to a few of your calls and texts after the break. As I mentioned, Andrew Gay's to join us after 1 o'clock. We'll talk some soccer as well with Simon Hill. And also got to ask you the question about Melbourne Storm star Brandon Smith. I'm not sure if you've seen the excerpts from his interview. What does the Melbourne Storm do? They haven't sanctioned Brandon Smith yet. They might not sanction Brandon Smith. If you don't know the story, and he has put out an apology, so I'll read you the apology very shortly. But in a podcast, the YKTR podcast, he upset the Storm by saying a few things, including that they have a heap of booze-ups, that he didn't use the word booze-ups, by the way, but that was essentially paraphrasing what he was saying. He intimated that drinking was a big part of the Storm's culture, and he said he wants to win an NRL premiership with the Roosters. Said that he can't wait to play and win a premiership for the Roosters in 2023. He's contracted to play for the Melbourne Storm in 2022. I'll play you a little bit of what Brandon Smith had to say after the break and also read you from his apology.
I think that the best thing about the Roosters is they can tell you how they're going to help you in life rather than help you in footy, because the footy, if your life's good, footy's good. And it was just mind-blowing. And they're just so professional with me. Yeah, like they took me into the league. So they had a presentation as well. Mitchie almost made me cry. I'm not even kidding. Like how he spoke about the club and like what they have done for him and like the history of why they wear that jersey, why we play the way we do. I was just looking at the Roosters jersey as he was saying it. I had like goosebumps. I was looking at it going, I want to win a premiership in that jersey.
That was Brandon Smith. Can you believe that? That's on the YKTR podcast. He's contracted to play for the Melbourne Storm next season and then heading to the Roosters in 2023. Your thoughts on what the Melbourne Storm should do? 1300 736 736. They haven't sanctioned him at all yet. He's put out a statement, and I'll read from the statement. I want to address current media speculation going on around me at the moment, and specifically my recent comments on the YKTR Sport podcast. Over the past 2 months, I've read multiple headlines about me day in, day out, many of which were untrue and none that came from my mouth directly. I'd done this podcast for that very reason, to be fully transparent about the process I've been going through. It's honestly been really exciting throughout, and I'm truly grateful to be in the position I'm in. One thing I pride myself on is being myself, and regardless of backlash, I will continue to do so. That being said, I do acknowledge and want to apologise for how some of comments have been received. And he goes on with that apology to say, specifically to the Melbourne Storm, it was never my intent to disrespect or come across as ungrateful to the club that has done so much for me and my family. And that goes for my coaches, members, staff, and most of all my teammates. I speak from the heart, for better or worse sometimes, and I'm sorry if anyone was hurt by my words. But at the end of the day, they are my words. So there you go. He can't wait to win a premiership at the Roosters were his words. I specifically also want to address the media honing in on my comments around the Storm culture and it being framed as drinking culture, in inverted commas, they have going on down there. Our culture is built on hard work and effort as the main priorities. These comments have been taken way out of context, and I implore anyone interested in the matter to please watch the interview in its entirety before jumping to conclusions. And the last little bit of his apology. This will be the last time I address the comments made on this podcast. My focus is now fully turned to the future with the Melbourne Storm and all the amazing opportunities laid before me. Whatever happens, I will give 100%. It's all I know. If I'm to be labelled a terrible person, so be it. If I cuss too much, I'm sorry, but that is me, and I will continue to be me. Forever grateful. Cheese. And, there were a couple of cusses in that interview. I think one report I read counted the F words at 61, and another that started with the third word, the letter of the alphabet, 3 times. Billy in Ascot Vale, as we head back to your calls, 1300 736 736 is the number. What should Melbourne Storm do with this Brandon Smith dilemma? Billy in Ascot Vale, welcome to you, Billy. Thanks for holding.
Yeah, no problem, Dwayne. Yeah, look, I understand Brandon's apology, but if he said that in the first place after the interview that he's still got a year to play with Storm and he's giving his best to that, I don't think the story would have been as big. It's just that he said it too late now in the apology. All he had to do was just say, I have 12 months left at Storm and I'm going to try my best to win the premiership before I leave. If he said that, everything would have been good. But anyway, my topic, Dwayne, is with Danny Laidley, would it be beneficial for North Melbourne to employ her in some aspect behind the scenes or on field, off field with their AFLW program? Do you think it would be beneficial or helpful or non-helpful? I just think with his football knowledge, you've got to remember he was an AFL coach and he's been at a few clubs, so he's definitely got football knowledge, so it could help their AFLW program.
I think that there's a chance for her to be employed by either North Melbourne or the AFL, Billy. I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think we need to understand, and we have through the AFLW, that people need to be allowed to be who they are. And I think the AFLW has reinforced that point to all of us, and it's a beautiful point reinforced so well. We love the AFLW for everything that it's brought. I love going to the games for everything it brings, the opportunity for women as well, for the opportunity for non-binary people to be able to enjoy who they are as well. And I think, Billy, the opportunity that the AFL and North Melbourne has with Danny Laidley is a huge one. So I agree with you on that. If the AFL can find a spot for her or North Melbourne can find a spot for her, I think it will be met with 100% round of applause from people who are in agreement. It's been something that a lot of people in this world have struggled to understand over the last couple of decades, but I think we are still drawing our attention toward these areas of society now that do give us an understanding that people do need to be allowed to be who they are, and equality is such a big part of the push in society nowadays that hopefully she does stay in footy.
Obviously, as a Victorian, I'd love to see it in Melbourne at the MCG, especially what the Victorian people have been through. I'd love to see 2 test matches in Melbourne.
A little bit of Shane Warne, but that's to be expected. That was Warney on Fox Sports News. 1300 736 736 if you've got a thought on the Melbourne Storm's Brandon Smith and what they should do with Brandon Smith, who is contracted to play for them next year. They haven't sanctioned him yet. They might not sanction him at all. If you've got a thought as well on where the 5th test should be played, if it's not in Perth, then give us a call. 1300 736 736 and we'll give you a slab of Urban Myth, no alcohol pale ale by Urban Alley. Try it this summer. The poll now has over 300 votes on our Dwayne's World Twitter poll, and Hobart 48%, Melbourne 43%, Sydney 3%, and other 6%. Dwayne's World for Berwick, Pakenham and Cranbourne Toyota. They have cars available right now, by the way. Back to your texts. Melbourne Storm should remind Brandon that they've only missed the finals 3 times in their history, so their culture couldn't be that bad. Thanks for that. Hi, Dwayne. Bellamy will address this problem internally. George from Blackie South. Yeah, it will be interesting. They might not give any public comment. Frank Panisi is a regular on this program, so we obviously will put in a request to speak to Frank Panisi, if not today, tomorrow, but we'll continue to follow this story. Hi, Dwayne. Great show. Melbourne all the way to host the 5th Ashes Test. Tim in Berwick again. People are saying Melbourne should get the extra test because we have missed out on so much recently, but Tasmania might say they haven't got a test since 2016. Yeah, but has it been the low attendance numbers that has been part of the reason for that? The Gold Coast will go close because the Queensland government is putting loads of money towards events and tourism. So, yeah, they could go back to the Gabba or the Gold Coast as an option. Hi, Dwayne. If Perth can't host the 5th test, I hope they can. However, if not, then Hobart, the people of Tassie, would embrace the match. Susan, let's hope they would embrace it. Cricket Australia should pick the 5th test venue as soon as possible. Never wait for WA. Hobart deserve a test or day-night here at the G. Well, I think they do want to make it day-night. That's the bottom line on all this. Daniel Brettig who broke this story, is going to join us after 2 o'clock to give us the latest on it as well. But my understanding is that they want to have a day-night test as the 5th test if it's not in Perth. And Perth, obviously, with the time frame of it, sends it into the eastern states at a night time. Anyway, a full test under the lights at Marvel. Keep the roof closed. That's from AG. Dwayne, Brandon Smith has a real case of the Ackers, and this won't end well if it continues. Sadly, time to let him go and not see out his contract. I think he will regret his actions when he reflects back on the things as a poor choice in his behaviour. Adelaide people can't complain about losing the Grand Prix when they have dumped the Adelaide 500, which was surely their biggest annual event. I'm still trying to work out why the hell they would do that. Greg from Somerville. Well, they sent the supercars to the Bend, and I understand the infrastructure they've put into the Bend, which for those people is a tail and Bend, which is about an hour and a quarter out of Adelaide. So it is a bit of a drive for people. It's not the city circuit, but why wouldn't you want to try and have both, even though you do want to make the Bend a premier venue for the future? Oh no, for heavens forbid, a few swear words were said. It was on a podcast, not a TV interview. That's nothing unusual for podcasts. Thanks for that. Well, there was, I think, 64 swear words thrown in there, and a couple that you think could have been skipped over without having to be used. Financial imperative will leave Cricket Australia no option but to have the final test of the MCG over Tasmania or the SCG due to higher number of spectators and dollars. Ross in Mildura, and it might come down to spectators and dollars. And we've talked about this over and over on this program before. Crowd maximisation and finance maximisation has been one of the things that has been pushed to the forefront, more so during this COVID time than any time before. Been a lot of money lost over the course of the last couple of years by sporting organisations who haven't been able to put on their big events. And another here, isn't there only 10 grounds in Australia that are approved for test match cricket? I don't think Geelong or Marvel are on that list. Dave in Hoppers, and I don't think Geelong would be the venue for it either. Always great to have your company for Midday Madness. Let's go straight back to your calls and your texts. 1300 736 736, the open line number. Anything in the world of sport you'd like to discuss, that's what Midday Madness is all about. 1300 736 736, the open line, brought to you by Werribee Kia. And you can drop down and see David and Janan and Aid and Jim and the team at Werribee Kia and tell them we sent you. A couple of texts before we head back to your calls. I can't recall a player that went from fan favourite to fan villain in one season. The cheese has cheesed the wrong fans and club off. That's in relation to Brandon Smith, who that's his nickname, obviously. Hi, Dwayne. Brandon is a gun and will always give his all. Biggest problem is getting the best out of him and Harry Grant. Terry in Heidelberg had a few texts come through about Brandon Smith. I'll read a few more shortly, but let me play you, given that Andrew Voss knows a hell of a lot more about rugby league than I. Let me play a little bit of Andrew Voss's editorial on Breakfast with Vossi on SEN. And this is, of course, just prior to his apology being sent out. Here's Andrew Voss from this morning.
What the hell is going on in the heads of some of our rugby league players these days? Do they live in the real world, or do some just not care? Brandon Smith, I declare, he is a great player. He is great to watch. He is a personality. He is good fun. But need I remind Brandon Smith, he is also an employee of the Melbourne Storm. They're the ones that are paying his wage this week, next week, and every week up until at least October 31 next year. After the grand final this year, Smith found himself caught up in the white powder scandal. The club stood by him. Yes, he was punished, and he subsequently issued an apology to the club, the fans, the sponsors, blah, blah, blah. Well, I hope he saved the apology on his laptop, because he may as well copy and paste it, because I think he owes them an apology, even more so this time, for kicking sand in the face of his current club and going way over the top in his praise of a rival, the Roosters, on a little-known podcast where I honestly believe he must have thought he wouldn't be heard by anyone. Could you imagine Cameron Smith, Billy Slater, Cooper Cronk ever saying such a thing? What is going on? The Melbourne Storm has been let down again. The club that we've had up on a pedestal as having possibly the best culture in the game, led by Craig Bellamy. How was he feeling when he had that grab relayed to him? How would he feel listening to that? To be honest, an apology this time from Brandon Smith, it would mean absolutely nothing.
A little bit of Andrew Voss on SEN Breakfast. Yeah, imagine if, to pull a name out of nowhere, Shane Edwards said this, wanted to go back to SA, and the Tiger star said this. Imagine if Patrick Dangerfield said this with one eye on leaving Adelaide Crows and heading to Geelong, said this kind of stuff. We wouldn't tolerate it in the AFL. It is bizarre to us, and still bizarre to me, that it is so prevalent in the NRL that you can play for one team, even though everybody knows you're going to the other team in time. But that's the rugby league landscape, and obviously I don't know enough about it to know why in the hell they get away with it, but it is surprising to me that they do get away with it, and it surprises a lot of AFL fans as well. Back to your calls in a second. 1300 736 736, the open line number if you'd like to join me. A couple of texts before I head back to your calls. If you have got a thought on it, before we turn our attention to a little bit of footy after the 1 o'clock news, Andrew Gaze and Simon Hill joins me, then jump on that open line. Dwayne's Oil, by the way, for Kogan Mobile. Got to give them a bit of love. They've been great supporters of this program. Kogan's mobile Black Friday offer is still on. You can buy one, get one free. And we're here for Berwick, Pakenham and Cranbourne Toyota. They have cars available right now. Okay, hi Dwayne. Imagine the series. This is the test series tied at 2-2, leading into a fifth test at the MCG. It would be massive. Tom, absolutely it would be, but that's not to say it wouldn't be massive in Hobart as well. But it on a accentuated scale, it would be a lot more massive in the sporting precinct of Melbourne. Bring it to Geelong, Dwayne. That's from Paul. Thanks for that. Quite a few people pumping up Geelong's ability to be able to host it. Can we travel to Tasmania? If so, make it a Tasmanian test, and I'll travel there. Need to get out of Victoria for a holiday. So there's a Victorian who would rather it was somewhere else, so they could get out of town. Smith signing players years ahead of time while still at other clubs is bonkers system. That's from Adam in Mulgrave. I think I read that one out earlier. And typical of the Vics, bringing up crowd numbers when it comes to test matches. If other states got test matches over the Christmas holidays, then their numbers would be up too. Share it around, give it to Tassie. If you want a day-night test, then have the day-night test Boxing Day. And that's one for another time as well. I don't think we'll ever get a day-night test for Boxing Day's test. I think it will always be a day test. But there's been a bit of talk about that. Maybe down the track, if we did have a fifth test and it was the MCG and it was day night and it was successful and a lot of people went and everyone raved about it, would you consider a day night test for Boxing Day going forward? 1300 736 736. A couple of footy issues floating around. Max Gawn spoke on SEN earlier today. Said a couple of things about the Melbourne victory. He's got a book out about the Melbourne Footy Club victory. They've got their big open day on Sunday, speaking of the MCG. And he said something that, well, he said a couple of interesting things today, Max Gawn, but he talked about the fact that Simon Goodwin, pre-season, put on the whiteboard that they would go to win the flag. Here's Max Gawn on that.
Yeah, there was two things that were said at the start of the year. One was myself in front of the group just before just after our last training session going into the Fremantle game. I said, we're going to win this week and our win-loss won't change and we'll be in the 8 for the rest of the year. And Goody, at the start of pre-season, when we walked in the front door, had up on the board, we're going to win the whole thing this year. So there are two things that's amazing that how it's worked out. And I promise you, Goody's never said that before, and I've never had a coach, as I've walked in, who's telling me we're going to win it. And I've never said that before as well. So it's worked out quite well this year. I'm probably going to try and say it again this year, and we've got to try and match it. But there's some cool things that I was able to jot down and remember from that early time that it's funny when you look back and go, geez, that actually worked. And we did this and that and this and that to make that work.
Yeah, it's a great story from Max Gawn today, told earlier today on SEN, and looking forward to hearing from a few players from different clubs over the next couple of days. They're all back at training now, the clubs, so they've all returned to training. Heaps of footy still on the agenda, so stick around. We'll talk some footy in the next hour. Been a lot of cricket, a little bit of rugby league. It's been a strange hour, not talking footy, but we'll do that very shortly. Andrew Gaze is going to join us to talk a little bit of NBA and NBL. Simon Hill as well to have a chat to us about the state of the A-League and the EPL. All things international football. The Matildas play the USA Again, Lionel Messi won his 7th Ballon d'Or, so we'll have a chat to Simon Hill about that. Plenty still to come, but back to your calls and a couple of your texts straight after the break. You're with Dwayne's World, and it's great to have your company for Midday Madness. Thanks for joining me for Midday Madness. Let's go straight back to your calls. Let's talk some footy for a second. Andrew Gaze is going to join us, as I mentioned, Simon Hill later on as well. Gazy's going to join us on Todd in around 20 minutes' time. So let's take a few of your calls right now. 1300 736 736. All clubs are back at training. A few going back today, a few went back yesterday, but essentially all clubs are back at training. Lists are now known. The draft is done. So what clubs have got now is essentially what clubs have got for round 1. I noticed that the bookies have put out their betting for the Premiership. They've been out for a while, but there's been a bit of a stabilisation in the betting. And I just wanted to ask you the question, have they got it right or have they got it wrong? The bookies have North Melbourne the favourite for the spoon still. And they're expecting the Gold Coast to be terrible again. They've got the Gold Coast and North Melbourne fighting out the wooden spoon last and second last. And they're also of the belief that Adelaide, Collingwood and Hawthorn won't be making the 8. But they've got Essendon finishing ninth in the betting. West Coast Eagles outside of the top 8, 10th in the betting. St Kilda 11th. Fremantle 13th in the betting. So their favourite Melbourne, which you would expect, 3.5 to 1 in essence Melbourne. Bulldogs second favourite, and then a group of teams that are kind of on the same level of betting. Brisbane, Port Adelaide, Geelong and Richmond. I'm a bit surprised by the odds of Geelong, to be honest. I think of that group, I reckon they're the ones most vulnerable. I do believe that Richmond will bounce back, but the order of betting kind of says that the bookies believe the top 8 to be Melbourne, the Dogs, Brisbane, Port, Geelong, Richmond, Sydney and the Giants, with Essendon on the 9th line of betting. And the Brownlow's interesting. I want to talk to you. Wines, Bonampelli, Walsh, Petrarca, Oliver is the order of betting for the Brownlow. Then Jack Steele, Lachie Neale, Dustin Martin is 8th in the betting for the Brownlow right now. He's on that list ahead of Nat Fyfe and Patrick Dangerfield with a few bookies. Other bookies have him on the same line of betting. But here's what David King had to say about Dustin Martin on breakfast today with Sam Edmund. And I agree. I reckon Dustin Martin, there's every chance that Dusty, even though he's one of the greatest players we've seen already, he could end up being an even better. I mean, if he's lost, well, at the moment it's 10 kilos. Say he puts a little bit of that back on heading into the season. He could be better than he currently is, I think, because he could run the midfield better, and he's still going to have the strength, because a lot of his strength is in leverage. Here's David King on Dustin Martin and the reduced weight and what might be in store from Dusty in 2022.
187 centimetres, so what's that, 6'2", 1.5, 6'2", and 93 kilo he was. That's the version that we'd seen. How many times have you seen him trapped one-on-one top of the goal square, use his torso to just move his opponent under the footy, out the back goal, and just be so strong?
So, ancillary question, can he still do that at 10 kilos lighter? Can he monster panic defenders deep in the goal, deep in the forward line?
So does he do that through timing and subtlety and just the art of using his rump at the right time?
Yes.
Or does he do it through sheer size?
Both. It's both.
Well, maybe he can get away with it. I think that when all players get 30 plus, they try and shed kilos at some point. It just gets harder to do what you've always done. And this is radical and different, and for different reasons. We know that.
The vision that we saw from it might have even been Mitch's Mob Channel 7 that got it. The vision of him training, he's noticeably lighter, like skinny almost.
So is he more value to Richmond as a midfielder or as a deep forward or a mid forward?
Well, his physical presence come round 1 might determine that, or pre-season. Where can he play? Where's he best suited to playing? I don't know if he's still got the power and the explosiveness that he had. We'll wait and see.
Can't wait.
It'll be
another
fascinating.
Little asterisk on the start of the season to have a look and see if Dusty, could it aid him playing more midfield minutes? Imagine if he gets more opportunity.
Like a high half forward or something like that as well, perhaps.
Well, I think the bookies have got it wrong with Dustin Martin, 8th in Brownlow betting. I'd be shuffling him right up the order. In fact, I'd be putting him number 1. I'd be putting him ahead of Ollie Wines. I'd be putting him ahead of Darcy Parish and Jack Steele and Lachie Neale, who are currently ahead of him. And how would I change up the bookies' odds as they stand right now, as I said a couple of days ago, and a few shouted me down, I think Essendon are a chance to finish top 4. I can't believe they're 20-1, Essendon. They're 9th in the betting. I'll be shuffling them right up the order. I think Essendon are as good a chance of winning the flag as Geelong, who are 10-1, Richmond and Sydney, and the Giants, who at the moment the bookies reckon will make the 8. A couple of your calls. Give away a couple of slabs of Urban Myth as well. No alcohol pale ale by Urban Alley. You can try it this summer, and then we'll head to Andrew Gaze from a cafe coffee catch-up. So 1300 736 736, the open line number. If you'd like to join me or tell me where you think the bookies have got it wrong, or if you think they've got it right. A few Yarra Bend driving range vouchers as well to give away. Play, practice, enjoy. Yarra Bend Golf is on Melbourne's doorstep. And a couple of Dwayne's World T-shirts as well that are about to hit the printers. Dusty at odds, worth a crack. Thanks for that as well on the text. Another here, Dusty has lost his power. Yeah, I don't really agree with that, but you might have the last laugh. You might be spot on. Thanks for that. Can you imagine the reception at Amy Park when Melbourne Storm and the Sydney Roosters when Brandon Smith joins them? I hope we smash them. That's from Dean in relation to what we were talking about earlier. I agree with the bookies. Thanks for that. I think that's from Ian. Carlton need to find a ruck, a quality mid, and now a fullback to climb the ladder next season. Well, they're essentially saying that Carlton and Fremantle won't be making the 8. That's what the Bulldogs are saying. And St Kilda, really, because they're in the same bracket. But I agree. I think the Dogs right now and Melbourne should be the outright premiership favourites. But that goes without saying, given that they were the two that made the grand final last year. Nathan Buckley declared his want to play for Collingwood while at Brisbane. Where did that get him? I'll tell you, a wonderful career full of football heartbreak. Thanks for that. Which AFL club would you least like to be drafted to? That's easy in my book. Look at their history. Or the Gold Coast. At least it could lead to a good payday at another club if you go to the Gold Coast. Thanks for that. One text here, Dusty who? I'm not sure on the same page as most of our listeners, but yeah, Dustin Martin could end up being the best player the modern generation has ever seen. Straight back to your calls, 1300 736 736, the number. Pete in Gladstone Park. Welcome to you, Pete.
Yeah, good day, Dwayne. Hey, listen, I reckon the bookies might have it wrong. I reckon Essendon and Fremantle. I reckon Fremantle will be a big improver next year. I reckon they'll come into the 8. And I reckon out of that list, GWS won't make it. And it'll be a toss-up between your mob, Geelong, and maybe Richmond, mate. And I hope Dusty does come back.
Geelong...
Even...
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry, mate.
No, I apologise for cutting you off. You think Geelong and Richmond could actually play off in the grand final?
No. I think they're a chance of not making it. Not making the 8.
Right.
I'm saying Fremantle and Essendon to come into that 8.
Yeah.
And GWS definitely I don't think will make it. And I think the other team to drop out, you've got to drop 2 teams out. And I think maybe Geelong or Richmond might be the other teams. One of those two.
I think Geelong's in danger as well. I agree with you on that. It is interesting. Geelong and Richmond, 3 flags each in their era of dominance. Most people believe that Geelong is about to fall off the cliff. That could well be the case. I think they've got one more year in the window, but I think they are about to head towards that cliff if they are not about to fall off it next year, then the year after. But yeah, Richmond's the interesting one. Lost Callum Coleman-Jones, lost Marbia Chol. It is a little bit of a dangerous time for Richmond, but their recruiters have done a pretty good job. And I think in that 24 to 26, 27 age bracket, they're not too bad off if those guys can take the next step up. You've also got, Rewald, who's getting close to the end, Trent Cotchin, who's getting close to the end. But, yeah, Richmond's an interesting one, Pete. Hold the line. Got something for you. Got a slab of Urban Myth No Alcohol Pale Ale by Urban Alley. You can try it this summer. Got a few of those to give away thanks to the good people at Urban Alley. Couple on the text. Watch Dusty become a running machine and still do what he used to do. And another here. Hi, Dwayne, as a Swan supporter. Really looking forward to seeing Pete Laddams work alongside Tom Hickey to create a strong ruck partnership. Bloods to finish top 4 from Sammy in Hadfield. And I'm pretty excited about what Sydney's got to offer as well, list-wise. I think the bookies might have it wrong with Sydney being on the 7th line of betting, or 7th in the overall reckoning, behind teams like Geelong and Richmond. Andrew Gaze, back to your calls very shortly, by the way. 1300 736 736 if you want to join me after I have a chat about all things basketball with the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Gazy, great to have you back on.
Good on you, mate. You're bumping me regularly, which I had to just keep my spirits high because I know you've had a busy agenda last week. But I'm glad to hear your dulcet tones, and even more excited about we're finally here. Only a couple more sleeps, and the NBL season starts. And who would have thought? Just a short period of time ago that we'd actually be here. So it's exciting, and looks like these teams are in tip-top shape in a game which shaping up for another fantastic season.
It took the biggest story of the year to bump you, though, Gazy. It was Tim Payne's announcement when that story broke. So that's the reason why we're about to get on. It's only the biggest story of the last decade.
Wow.
But, yeah, we're pretty...
In these challenging times, you find out just where you are in the pecking order. And I appreciate that I just had to take a back step ever so slowly. But you've called me back, so that's great news.
I have. Andrew Gaze joining us from a Cafe Iced Coffee. It's real coffee, real cold. Watch every NBL game live on ESPN. It starts Friday night. In fact, there's a doubleheader on Friday night, so it's right across the weekend, but it starts with an early game. The Tasmania Jack Jumpers are getting an opportunity to be front and centre, the first game of the new season for the first team, Gazy. So that's pretty exciting for them as well.
Well, it is, and you talk about a team that has some level of history, because if you go back to the Tassie Devils days, that we've had a team, or even if you go back to the Devonport Casino City, who won a title, I think, back in 1980 with the great Ian Davies. So that Tasmania actually have had representation before, but they've had a bit of a spell for quite some time, and now that they're back in the competition, we're looking forward to see what they can bring to the table. They're up against the Brisbane Bullets. Help me out here if I'm making a mistake here, Dwayno. I think they're up against the Brisbane Bullets, and the Perth Wildcats take on the Adelaide 36ers. So it's Brisbane, and a lot of people poo-pooed Brisbane in what happened to them in the off-season, losing Vic Law. That was always going to be a hard guy to replace. Andre Lamanis no longer with the team as well. He's gone and taken his talents to Japan for his coaching. James Duncan, who was an assistant with the Sydney Kings, he's jumped on board as the head coach. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but I actually like what I've seen from the Brisbane Bullets in the off-season. They've got this kid called Robert Franks, who a bigger type of guy who can shoot the three. And, anytime you've got Nathan Sobey in the lineup, they look pretty strong. So I think it's going to be a tough opening night for Tasmania, the Jack Jumpers. But I think that this season it's going to be, as it has been over the last few, very little separating the good teams from the not-so-good teams.
So who are you expecting to beat the good teams? The Blitz it gives us something, but it didn't give us a lot when you consider that.
No.
I think talking about the bookies before, they had the 36ers as, I think, finishing third last, and yet they were undefeated through the Blitz. So what did you make of the Blitz?
Yeah, well, what it reinforced to me is that there is a lot of parity amongst all these teams. You throw in some imports, and like you said, during the Blitz, we didn't get to see the teams playing at full strength. The coaches were not always. They were resting some guys, and some of their main guys weren't playing the same level of minutes that they normally would. But for me, the things that stick out is Melbourne United should be thereabouts again. The Perth Wildcats. When you've got a team that has played in the finals for, again, help me out here, Dwayne, 34 seasons in a row. Possibly 35, something in that order. They could suit up the local under-14 team, and I'm still going to tip them to make the playoffs because they are just extraordinary. And they have done a really good job, I think, in the off-season. They're another team that everyone thought, well, they lose Trevor Gleeson and things might drop off a little bit. But they've picked up some really good players in Vic Law. They've got a superstar in Bryce Cotton. I think that they've been able to recruit really well in the off-season, and I, again, expect them to be there. I also expect the Sydney Kings to be there. And I think the Illawarra Hawks, they looked really good in the pre-season. So they're my tip, early season really, really early season type predictions. But and anything can happen. But there's 4 teams that I reckon will make it.
So what's the coach worth in the NBA? In basketball in general, Gazy, you've got one of the greatest coaches of all time, Trevor Gleeson, has left the Wildcats. So how much does that take away from them? Or is it a fairly sort of, is the transition not that big? We have seen a couple of teams that have changed coaches rapid fire. I mean, the Adelaide 36ers have had 2 coaches since Joey Wright because they had to try and change it up to get it right. And CJ Bruton's undefeated now in the preseason, so he's going well. But what's a coach worth in the NBL?
Well, I think it's a lot. Clearly, if you're going to have a circus, you've got to have the animals. And without the animals, it's not really a circus, and you're not going to do really well. So there is no doubt that talent is important, but I still think that that what can separate it when there's such small margins between the teams, and when you look at the overall talent, the coaching strategy, the philosophy, the way in which they can put in place a system that allows the players to flourish in that system is important. A lot of it now, and I'm sure it's the same in the AFL and a lot of sports, a lot of it comes down to not only just the X's and O's, but the relationships you build, this word culture that is bandied around a lot, but it is significant, and that is driven a lot by the coach and the standards that he puts in place and how he holds people accountable, or she holds that people accountable to those standards. So the coaching is really, really important, but bring Phil Jackson out here and he ain't got the tools, it's not going to matter.
So let's talk about a couple of the tools. Who are you expecting? Well, we know Bryce Cotton just keeps on keeping on, so he's going to be a superstar again for the Wildcats. But who are you sort of excited to see? Tyler Harvey was great last season.
Yeah.
Mitch Crick and Chris Golding can turn it on. Jalen Adams, tell us a bit about Jalen Adams. Who are you excited to be seeing?
Well, Jalen Adams, he's a live wire, isn't he? He showed a lot of athleticism. The one that we've seen before that I really liked, I liked him in the preseason as well, is Vic Law. Now, he's a guy that's played a significant number of games in the NBA, played with Orlando. Last season was with the Brisbane Bullets and showed some spectacular form, then got hurt and missed a big chunk of the season. But I think that he, alongside Bryce Cotton, and you talk about the Perth Wildcats and how they can continue to that run of playoff appearances, with those 2 guys there, along with a star in Luke Travers. I don't know if you've seen too much of Luke Travers, Dwayne, but he's a kid that I think he can draw a lot of... Well, there's a lot of parallels to him with Josh Giddey. The way he plays, really good size, decent athlete, not explosively quick. He's got some issues with his shot, and that's the only thing. He is less advanced than what Josh Giddey was with his shot. But he is another player that I think has got a lot of upside and eventually will be in the NBA, still a very young man. So the Perth Wildcats on that basis is really good. Not a lot of people have been talking about the New Zealand Breakers, and I think that they've put together a decent team as well. They've got this kid on their team, Peyton Seaver. Now, he's not real big. He played at Louisville under Rick Pitino, and he's been in Europe. He's another one that when you think of those star guards, he'll do it in a different way, but if you think Jerome Randall, Casper Ware, he's that type of talent that I think that can have an impact on the competition. And some of these, Jarrell Martin for the Sydney Kings, he's my really, really early, without even playing one single game in the regular season, tip for MVP. So there's a lot of players in there that, like you mentioned before, the hard thing is we didn't see a lot of these new players in the competition throughout the pre-season. The coaches, they gave them some minutes to acclimatise them, but we didn't see a whole bunch of them. So I reserve judgment on a few of them. But like you say, the Sydney Kings, I really like R.J. Hunter with what he did at college, spent a little bit of time in the NBA as well. Jalen Adams, as you mentioned. So there's a whole lot of players, the new look players that I think we're going to have to wait until the first bit of the season to really make a judgment on.
What chance Josh Giddey can win Rookie of the Year in the NBA?
Good chance, I would have thought. A long way to go. It is a war of attrition. 82 regular season games is a long, long season. But where he is right now, he is right up there. You look at the way he's been able to mature in such a very short period of time. He is putting up numbers and doing things that not many players have been able to do in the history of the game. And whenever you're in that type of company as LeBron James, in regards to statistical categories as a 19-year-old, they are very, very impressive numbers. So I think that you look at the draft and some of the players that they had. Cunningham from the Pistons, he didn't start the season, but he's showing a lot of promise. Green from Houston was the number 2 pick. And he's in a poor team, so he, like Josh, is going to get a lot of opportunities. In fact, they're playing today. I don't know if you've got a score update.
Yeah, they are.
They are playing
would
today.
Would you like it, or geez, look away now? Houston 60, Thunder 41. So Houston's sort of blown them away in the third. They've got a 14-4 run going to start the third.
Yeah. If you're looking for one, though, that I really like, that I think will be there, when you're talking about Rookie of the Year, Evan Mobley. Now, he's with the Cleveland Cavaliers. He's another one I really liked. I thought that was a great draft pick, and, it remains to be seen. Like I said, it's early days, but he's another one that I really like the look of and think that he's going to be a long-term prospect.
Given that we can't talk about the MVP because of Steph Curry and then Daylight second, have you seen a player tee up a referee before? It's a rare thing that happens. Steph's going so well at the moment.
I tell you, I have League Pass, so that gives me options to watch every single game. And when I go on there, if I see a Warriors game and Josh Giddey or Joe Ingles is not playing, because I want to watch the Australians, then I'm straight on to the Warriors. They play an entertaining brand of basketball. He's having an impact, I think, and it astounds me that these words are actually going to come out of my mouth, but he is actually having the type of impact that you have to go back to someone like Michael Jordan in his heyday. If you see, now he does it in a completely different way, but the impact that he is having on his team and on the league with just some of the most phenomenal shooting, and he plays with a smile on his face, and he plays with such joy, and the way in which he does it off the ball as well as with the ball, and not in a selfish way. It is just an absolute joy to watch, and and that's hard when you've seen a lot of basketball. Yes, I'm always going to watch it and really appreciate it, and I love it more than anything. But he adds a whole new dimension to it. He is just an absolute delight to watch. And here's a team that I think are 18-2, and they've still got Klay Thompson and Wiseman to come back into their team. So that they are doing extraordinary things, and Steph Curry is just off the charts. He is like watching my son play on the NBA 2K game with some of the shots that he makes.
No, he's flying. Hey, the Suns, before I let you go, who is the big danger? We've talked about the Nets a lot on this program. We probably talk way too much about the Lakers on this program, but everybody does. The Suns, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, the Suns are putting together some sort of season too.
After a little wobbly start, I think they might have lost their first 3 or something like that early on, and then they've gone on after the first few games, and it's either 15 or 16 games that they've reeled off, and Devin Booker is a superstar. He's another one that when the game's on the line, you know they're going to go to him, but he does it in a way that some guys, when they're out there, look very self-centered in the way in which they're accumulating their points, and they do it beautifully. Even LeBron, I watched him in a triple overtime game. But when you just throw it to someone on the wing and it's ISO ball and everyone else is just standing around watching, and they might as well have their pom-poms and just be cheering because they're that irrelevant to it. It doesn't have the same impact. But a guy like Devin Booker and the way that he plays the game, it makes it much more enjoyable as a fan to watch. And the Phoenix Suns are another team that I really enjoy the way they go about it.
And no interview is complete these days without a Ben Simmons question. I think Philadelphia beat Orlando today, 101-79. 296. What's the latest? What are you hearing?
Wow, we're hearing all sorts of things. Social media was rife last week that suggested that maybe he might be running into some financial trouble and he'd be forced to come back in. But such as these theories that people are putting out about what may happen, and really they're only theories. He was cited at their game the other day. Prior to their game, I think it was a couple of days ago, and he was at the stadium. So I guess there is the prospect that he may come back. It seems like they've both certainly the club's dug their heels in, and they're going to make him pull on a jersey before anything happens. So I think that's the most likely scenario, and it's going to be very, very interesting television when he plays that first game for Philadelphia, if that in fact does happen, because he has captivated not just the US audience and the Australian, right throughout the world. Everyone's intrigued about what's going to happen to Ben Simmons and how this might pan out. But hopefully for his sake, and that he finds he gets in a good headspace, and that he feels comfortable and can, again, bring that joy back to the game, because without that, it can be some real tough times despite the enormous rewards that these guys get.
Hey, before I let you go, everybody says when they ring this program, no other sport changes its rules like the AFL. Gee, the NBA's natural shooting motion rule change has been great, hasn't it?
It is. Players were basically in contact, and time was the typical one, how he just threw in it's really not a new change. It's just a point of in the right way. No, you're not. Surely not. You got me.
No, you're right. You're right. Yeah, got you back.
No, you got me back. But I think it's a great thing, and it's made the game a lot more enjoyable, and it puts that balance between the offense and the defense, and gives everyone a more balanced and fair approach to the game, which I enjoy.
Love talking to you, Gazy. Can't wait to see you. Well, I'd run across your path sometime this weekend. We're doing a game together, are we? Surely we are.
Not this weekend, but there's no doubt when you're there. Well, I'm really looking forward to hearing you pumping it up and get us excited about the game. We need you this first weekend, Wayne. So I know you're busy here in the afternoon's program, but leave a little in the tank for the weekend and bring your A game and pump us up, my friend.
I think there's that many good players in the comp this season. It won't need any commentator pumping it up. It'll pump itself up. Great to have you, Gazy. We'll talk soon. The greatest of all time, Andrew Gaze, having a chat. Couple of calls after the break. You can get your morning coffee, by the way, ice cold with McCafe Iced Coffee. It's real coffee, real cold. And you can watch every NBL game live on ESPN, either via KO or via Foxtel, or on the ESPN app. We're talking a bit about Melbourne Storm star Brandon Smith in the opening hour of the program. We were expecting a statement or a reaction from the Melbourne Storm at some stage in the opening hour of the program. Well, it has come. So the statement just in from the Storm, and the headline is Smith to finish with Storm at the end of 2022. And I'll read you the statement. Melbourne Storm has received written confirmation that Brandon Smith will leave the club at the end of his current contract at the end of the 2022 NRL season. Smith made his debut with the Storm in 2017, gone on to play 86 NRL matches with Melbourne, including 24 in the recently completed 2021 season. The 25-year-old also gained 7 caps for New Zealand and represented the Maori All-Stars on 2 occasions. As well as playing in the 2020 Premiership winning team, Smith was a member of the Storm Victoria's 2018 World Club Challenge squad and won this year's Dally M. Hooker of the Year award. He will return to training on December 7. Storm CEO Justin Rodsky said today, recent comments made by Brandon in a podcast and the way he expressed them do not align with Storm's values and the way we operate as a club. The statements have deeply offended current and former players, coaches, staff and board members, and the club strongly rejects the comments made about the Storm culture. We acknowledge Brandon's apology made on social media today and his willingness now to prepare for the 2022 season with the Storm. Brandon has every right to explore future opportunities as any player would in his position, and ultimately we respect his decision to play football elsewhere from 2023, Rodsky said. So, no suspension, no explanation of any fine, no sanction whatsoever released by Melbourne Storm in that statement. So just a big hug when he arrives for training December 7, and they'll get on with business. Back to your calls, and Simon Hill not far away as well. You with Dwayne's World. It's been fantastic to have so many of your texts come through on the Tempur text machine, TEMPUR, mattresses and pillows like no other today, but it's great that they come through every day, a couple of them. Every Warn article is about what decision shouldn't have been made, anti-governing body or anti-player every time. Warner would be the death of Australian cricket, never ever. Mike, thanks for that as far as that leadership question goes. Dusty simply is the best midfielder of all time. But having said that, projections of him being a better player as a lighter body weight are flawed. His don't argue and strength in evading opponents is key to his success. The break in the 2020 season actually allowed him to put weight on to his ideal optimum playing weight. His next starting weight will be a fascinating watch as it is an unknown category. Ash, yeah, whether it's all about leverage and speed as well, if you can... I mean, he uses leverage so well, positioning, body positioning so well. It's not just the strength. Warren 100% correct. Stark failed last year v India and was behind Richardson until he did his shoulder. If you want to win at the Gabba, Richo plays. Big Brian from Bali, thanks for that. Totally agree with the caller RE Shane Warne being negative about most things cricket. Seems to think he's the self-appointed cricket guru who knows everything. Well, he's a cricket commentator who knows a lot, and he's done a lot. So he's in a position having known, having done, and he's pretty good at explaining it all. I like him. Another big hour to come. Amit Baines, Western Bulldogs CEO, to talk some football with us. Paul in West Brunswick's been holding across the news. So, Paul, welcome to you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, just about Braden Smith and his backhanded cracks at the culture at Storm. Firstly, you don't get as successful as a club like Storm unless you have an absolutely brilliant culture where you build individuals as well as a team. And secondly, there's been a lot of players that left the Storm who have been so-called very good players, but they've never got a decent run at rugby again. They've rugby league again. They've turned into pretty ordinary players. So I think he needs to have a pretty good look at himself.
Are you surprised they didn't fine him or suspend him or come out a bit stronger than they did?
No, they'll use him. They'll use him for what they need for next year and all that. And he's going to go anyway. And he's apologised, but he's the one who has to deal with what he's done with the players and the playing group on a couple of things. But Bellamy's got such a brilliant culture at that club. They'll work through this. But I'll be interested to see how he actually does go to the Roosters, because he hasn't shown himself to be a sparkling individual off the field lately.
No. Hold the line, Paul. We've got something for you. $50 Yarra Bend driving range voucher. Play, practice, enjoy. Yarra Bend Golf is on Melbourne's doorstep. Thanks for holding across the news. You can join me anytime. 1300 736 736 is the number. 1300 736 736, the open line, which is brought to us by Werribee Kia. And if you do drop down to Werribee Kia, if you're in the market for a new or a used car, you want to take one of their Kia demos for a drive, and they've got plenty down at Werribee Kia. You can ask for David or Janan or Aid or Jim or any of the team down there. They're all down there, and they'd love to see you. A couple of texts that have come through. Dusty was fending off guys at 16 years of age. Dropping 10 kilo over the summer won't deny him the ability to use his power and strength. It may actually give him the ability for more time in the midfield with the lighter frame, and that's the text that I agree with 100%. I think he will still be able to use the don't argue. It's a leverage, power, strength issue, and the ability to be able to run the midfield and actually have more speed. He might be in a situation where he doesn't even have to use the don't argue quite as much, because he's got a bit more mobility and speed added to his game, and also a little bit more stamina when it comes to those chasing him down. Hi, Dwayne, as the great Rex Hunt used to say, it's neither right nor wrong, it's an opinion and it's mine. Love Shane Warne as he speaks his mind, same as Kane, gets you thinking. All power to them. That's from Susan. Thanks for that as well. And one here on the text as well. Person sent through their top 8 in reaction to the way the bookies have framed it. We were talking about it earlier. My top 8 for 2022. Bulldogs, Melbourne, Richmond, Brisbane, Geelong, Essendon, Collingwood up to 7th from Dean. Carlton 8th. Giants St Kilda, Hawks, Sydney, Port Adelaide 13th. Wow, how about that? It's an interesting way of looking at the season coming. I mentioned that Joss Butler spoke earlier today after the washout in Brisbane, so poor preparation for the English cricket team. A couple of the others in the team that are going to play pivotal roles have also spoken about the preparation. Here's Joe Root talking about the interrupted prep that they've had England.
I think it's been unusual, obviously having to spend a period of time in quarantine and training within that quarantine phase. And then obviously coming to Brisbane and the weather being as it has been, we haven't had that 3-day game as we would have liked. But ultimately, it was always going to be the case off the back of this World Cup that tomorrow was be the first day as a squad that we would get together as an Ashes squad with those World Cup guys joining us. So we always knew that this next phase, this next period of time was going to be the most crucial part in terms of doing everything we can collectively together, getting tight, getting clear, and using this as best as we can to ready ourselves.
Joe Root talking about that interrupted prep. Dwayne's Ward for Berwick, Pakenham and Cranbourne Toyota. They have cars available right now at Berwick, Pakenham and Cranbourne Toyota. So if you are heading down that way, make sure you tell them we sent you as well. Simon Hill's been good enough to join me, the voice of football and host of the Global Game, which is 8 p.m. Thursdays on SEN right around the country. And a pretty big one today as well. The Matildas and the USA playing tonight. Plenty to get to in the world of world football with Simon Hill. And he joins us on the line. Welcome to you, Simon. Great to have you back.
Good to be with you, Dwayne. How are you, mate?
I'm pretty good. I'm excited. We've got some pretty good football to watch tonight, although the Aussies a little disappointing in their first match-up against the US.
Yeah, they were. Same old failings. Defensively, a little bit too open. But I thought going forward, they looked exciting. We know that they can score goals. There's plenty of goals in that team. But this is the last hit out for Tony Gustafsson before the Women's Asian Cup in India, which starts in January. So it's the last chance to learn to try and resolve some of those issues tonight against the Americans, who have brought sort of an experimental lineup, and Australia experimented as well. But it just shows that there's a bit of a gap still, unfortunately, between Australia and the very top teams in the world, even though we've got some world-class players. So maybe we'll get a little bit more insight tonight as to just how far away or not we are ahead of that major tournament in January.
Had a few opinions on Sam Kerr on the text. Waste of time me having an opinion. I don't watch her games for Chelsea and haven't watched as closely as you. So I asked you the question that's been posed on our text line a couple of times. How good is she, and should she have won the Ballon d'Or?
Well, she finished third in the Ballon d'Or, which at least she's got on the podium. But there are, other great players around the world, and I think probably one of the issues here in Australia, certainly when it comes to women's football, is that people don't necessarily watch an awful lot of it, and therefore they rightly see Sam banging in goals for Australia and for a club side Chelsea in the UK and think, well, why isn't she the best player in the world? Well, she's one of the best players in the world, but there's an awful lot of competition in our game. There's 200 countries that play football, so it's not easy to win those individual awards. But she's finally on the podium. She's had a good year. In fact, a very good year. Reached the final of the Women's Champions League. She won the FA Women's Super League with Chelsea. She won a cup competition with them as well. She won the Golden Boot. She was very close to a bronze medal, obviously, with the Matildas in Tokyo. So she's had a terrific 12 months, but it just goes to show you just how hard it is to win these individual awards. I mean, we've seen in the men's awards overnight, Leo Messi has won it, I think, for the 7th or 8th time. So, try being one of his contenders. It's almost impossible to win these things.
Well, I've had one on the text here saying Mo Salah should have won it. Who were those that probably feel a bit miffed that they didn't win it?
Well, again, you can make a case for, one or two. Yeah, Mo Salah has certainly had a terrific 12 months. And again, many people believe that right at this moment, he is arguably the best player in the world. I think if I was Jorginho, the Chelsea midfielder, and again, midfielders don't always get, the attention because they're not goal scorers. But he has won pretty much everything that you can win in the last 12 months. He won the Euros with Italy. He won the Champions League with Chelsea. I mean, those are the two biggest competitions on offer over the last 12 months if you play in Europe. So he can feel a bit stiff. Robert Lewandowski would have been close. I'm a bit biased, but I think Kevin De Bruyne had a fantastic 12 months. And Mo Salah, as you rightly say, he's just banging in goals for fun at the moment. So, there's plenty that could have put their hand up and said, look, it should have been mine. But it's difficult to get past the best player in the world. That's why he's got that title, Leo Messi.
And I'm sure that you guys have the same arguments we do about other sports as well on this program. Where does Lionel Messi now sit when it comes to the all-time greats? Or are you sick of that argument? Is he up there? Is it? I had the same chat with Andrew Gaze earlier about Michael Jordan and Steph Curry. Is he the heir to the throne? Has he already got it?
It's a good question. No, I'm not tired of discussing it because they're good debates to have. It's always difficult to judge across different eras. You look in the past and think, well, the two standouts really in global football are Pelé, who played in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and Diego Maradona, who was late 70s throughout the 80s and early 90s. Now, Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo will be in that conversation as well as the two best players of the modern generation. I think Messi is up there. The only thing that counts against Messi, and it's the same for Ronaldo, is that they haven't yet won a World Cup. Do you have to win a World Cup to be, acclaimed as the greatest player of all time? I think you probably do. Maradona won one. Pelé won multiple World Cups. And as good as Messi and Ronaldo are, and they've won regional titles, South American championships for Messi, and European championships for Ronaldo with Portugal, but they haven't yet won the biggest prize. Now, this World Cup coming up in 2022 in Qatar, it's probably the last chance hurrah for both of them to win the biggest honour of all. So if they do that, then, yeah, you can probably put them on par because they're unbelievably talented footballers. And the fact that they've done it for so many years consistently puts them in that register as well. But at the moment, for me, and it's only my opinion, I still have Pelé as number one, Maradona a very close second.
Love it. That'll get the text machine firing up as well. If you've got a thought, 0433 98 11 16, 0433 98 11 16. Speaking of winning, Melbourne Victory have been doing exactly that. 2 wins from 2. Good start to the season for Victory.
Very good, and probably what we expected from Tony Popovic. 2 clean sheets. They've already equalled their total from last season in terms of shutouts, which tells you how bad their season was last year. So he's gone back to basics, made them tough to beat, and they look much better going forward as well. Now, in fairness, he's got Marco Rojas back fit. He missed most of last season through injury. Robbie Cruz, a big chunk as well. Having those 2 players back fit and firing is like having 2 new marquee players because they're quality players. So I think it's set quite nicely for Victory to have a very good season. I certainly don't think they're going to get the wooden spoon like they did last year. I think they're going to be challenging up near the top, and their early season form has just underlined that.
And Melbourne City, 2-2 with Adelaide, and they've got an interesting match-up against Western United this weekend.
Yeah, that will be an interesting clash. I think the only concern for City at the moment, again, similar to round 1, they were very good for an hour. 2 goals up in both games and seemingly cruising towards victory. In round 1, they allowed Brisbane to get back into it at 2-1, and but for a very controversial VAR decision to disallow Kai Truin's goal for Brisbane, they would have ended up on the 2-2 scoreline. Now, on Saturday, they did exactly the same thing, and unfortunately, they couldn't escape this time. A late error from Tom Glover, allowing Ben Halloran the chance to make it 2-2 with a terrific finish, it must be said. So that's a little bit of a concern, I think, for Paddy Kisnorbo. They're playing well, but they're allowing teams to get back into it. They're not putting teams to bed. And that's been a failing that City had historically in the past. And I think Patrick Kisnorbo, their coach, will be anxious to make sure that doesn't repeat itself on a regular basis. And this will be a good test for them against Western. who got their first win of the season against Perth, thanks to Dylan Wenzel-Halls. It's a derby game of sorts, and it'll be tough for them.
Man, you happy with their draw against Chelsea and the EPL? Obviously, we've been talking about Chelsea, Man City and Liverpool in that three-way battle, and the three-way battle, if we're all lucky, will go all the way down to the wire.
Yeah, well, United, of course, now under new management, overnight confirmed that the German Ralf Rangnick will be in interim charge. So the interim takes over from the interim, okay, which was Michael Carrick, after the departure of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I repeat, I think it's a little bit of a strange move from United, but maybe their long-term target is Mauricio Pochettino, who's currently under contract with Paris Saint-Germain. He's already made interesting noises about potentially moving to Old Trafford next year. We've got that sort of new manager bounce, if you like. United getting a draw against Chelsea. They didn't play particularly well. The big talking point was leaving Cristiano Ronaldo on the bench. I think that might not be a bad solution, to be honest. Ronaldo is still a terrific player, he can still score goals, but he doesn't necessarily fit into the team structure. He doesn't press, he doesn't work, and that's understandable because he's 36. So it's an interesting scenario for Rangnick, who comes in with this brief, basically to steady the ship until the end of the season, and then seemingly he's going to move upstairs. But I reckon if he does well, he'll want the gig himself. But anyway, we shall see.
No, it's exciting stuff at the moment, the way it's panning out with the cream rising to the top. Before I let you go, Simon, just a little preview as to what you think might happen tonight. The interesting part with the USA women's team being here, they are one of the most publicised women's teams in the US. They get a lot of press. This gets some cut through over there. Even watching shows like Pardon the Interruption, they normally get a mention. They're a fairly popular national team.
Well, they are, and with good reason, because they win. And Americans like winners. And I think, Australia is probably pretty similar, to be honest. They've won the FIFA Women's World Cup on 4 different occasions. They've won gold medals at the Olympics. They've been the benchmark in women's football around the world for many, many years. Now, they're facing a big challenge at the moment because Europe, in particular, as a region, is investing an awful lot of money in their women's programs. We're seeing this with the FA Women's Super League in England and various leagues around Europe, Germany, Spain, Italy, France, etc. So there's going to be a big challenge coming up for them at the moment. But they have a great development system through the college, set up, which brings players through on a regular basis. We saw some of those at the weekend. How it's going to play out tonight, I don't know. I still think Australia, gave a pretty good account of themselves. I know they lost 3-0. But I think that scoreline did flatter the Americans a bit. If Australia can tighten up defensively, and we've been saying this now like a scratch record for the last 12 months, then, they've got a chance of beating the Americans tonight. And just to tell you how difficult that is, tonight will be the 33rd meeting between these two nations, and Australia have won once. That was in 2017. So that's how difficult and dominant the American team are. So, yeah, watch the game tonight. It'll be fascinating to see how much progress the Matildas have made.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So for those who want to check it out, Channel 10's broadcast tonight, I think, starts at 7 p.m. You'll be part of the coverage, Simon?
Absolutely, yep.
Looking forward to it. 7 p.m. tonight. And, you can have a browse at what the Standard you think and have a chat to us tomorrow about it. I'd love to talk some women's football with you tomorrow. We don't talk about it enough. You can catch Simon Hill as well, the voice of football, on the Global Game, 8 p.m. Thursdays on SEN right around the country as well. Great to have a chat to you, Simon, and I really appreciate your time. Good luck tonight. Simon Hill joining us. A couple of texts on the way to the break. Collingwood are the bet of the year to make the 8. Get on now. And Pipe, Warney is the new Ian Chappell when it comes to being negative. Chappell replaced Neil Harvey in the same role. Chris in Sunshine Coast. Thanks for that, Chris. Back to your calls. Bulldog CEO Amit Baines not far away, but Daniel Breddick's been good enough to join us, the Age Chief Cricket Writer. We took a lot of calls, read out a lot of texts in the opening hour of the program. The Twitter poll, by the way, that we put up, if the test can't be played in Perth, where should it be played? MCG, Tasmania or other? Well, the MCG ended up getting the most votes. Over 600 votes all up. Melbourne, 47%. Hobart, 45%. Other, 8%. Daniel Breddick is the one who broke the story, and he's been good enough to give us a couple of minutes of his time. Welcome to you, Daniel. Great to have you on.
Great to be here, Dwayne. Beautiful day in Melbourne as well.
It always is. If you had to put a percentage on it right now, what percentage would you put on Perth being able to host it?
Well, if the CEO of WA Cricket is only saying 50-50, I'd say it's probably closer to a 30% chance if we balanced it all out. Given the complexity of all of the conditions required to get players and officials into Perth, never mind all the broadcasting staff, all of the other many casts of thousands that are required for an Ashes Test match, I think it looks increasingly long odds. And I think as each day goes past without kind of a clear indicator from the WA government about opening their borders, I think it gets a harder sell even then.
So who would be the favourite, and what would Cricket Australia have as their main considerations as to where they place it?
Well, there's probably two main ones. One is obviously a traditional kind of sense of equity in terms of how you share test matches around the country. Cricket Australia being a federal body that's comprised of 6 state associations, all of them very eager to get their pound of flesh as far as cricket content is concerned. So that's the number one, I think, priority, and that's no doubt why Tasmania and Tasmania Cricket are still looking at this in a very bullish way in terms of, well, if one of the other states fall over, well, we should be given the opportunity. But the second one, and this is obviously a very important one in a time of COVID, a global pandemic, but also issues in terms of balance sheets for sports around the world, it's revenue. How much revenue can a given event raise in terms of hosting an Ashes Test match? And as you well know, Dwayne, from footy in the last couple of years, that was clearly a big consideration for where the AFL Grand Final was going to go. You know, how much revenue could the AFL gain from being in Brisbane, having a full crowd, or in the case this year, being in Perth, having a full crowd. And if you were to weigh up the venues purely on that basis, you'd probably have Melbourne at the top of the tree, closely followed by Sydney, and Hobart would be a long way down the list.
So we've got you on the line now. You're probably waiting for your phone to ring and tell you whether it's Carey or Inglis. Are you expecting that in the next couple of hours?
I think they have to be getting close, just on the basis that George Bailey's selection chair has made it pretty clear that he doesn't want players sitting on tenterhooks too long and burning up their mental resources, not knowing if they're going to play in a test match or not. My expectation is that in a pretty tight call, they'd have to go with Alex Carey just on the fact that he's played a lot more cricket lately. And they already have an issue where they have a lot of guys who've played in the T20 World Cup in the UAE, so they haven't played much red ball cricket at all in quite a long time. They can obviously train a fair bit at the moment in their camp in Queensland, but actual match time they don't have. So that means that the guys who have played Sheffield Shield cricket, red ball cricket, ahead of this series are in a pretty advantageous position. And I'm not just talking about Alex Carey there, but guys like Nathan Lyon has obviously played, Usman Khawaja, Travis Head, they've obviously played. So I think that puts Alex Carey a little bit ahead of Josh Inglis, even though Inglis is extremely highly regarded as a very skillful operator.
And on that score, does it mean that England's going to be underdone?
Well, they're going to be underdone, certainly in terms of Australia and Australian conditions, but they're not going to be underdone in the sense of Test cricket. Australia haven't played a Test match since January. Yeah. England have played 11 in that time. So they have a little bit more Test match grooving, I suppose you'd say, in terms of how they're going to do it, albeit in very different conditions. So you could say they're underdone in one sense, but not underdone in another.
Great to have you, Daniel. Congratulations on breaking that story, and we'll be waiting to see if you break the story later on today about who gets the keeper position and where we're going to end up with that test. Maybe if Perth can't host it, you can read Dan's work in The Age or at theage.com.au. I forgot, you can still buy it at the shop. Yeah, you can buy The Age and see it actually in a print version and hold it in your hands, but you can also log on to theage.com.au. We'll talk to you soon, Dan. Thanks for your time.
Thanks a lot, Dwayne.
Daniel Brettig joining us. Great to have your company wherever you might be listening. Amit Baines, Western Bulldogs CEO, has been good enough to jump on the phone. The Bulldogs have announced the strengthening of their alignment with Ballarat, which is great news for all those who love their football in the west of Victoria and Ballarat Central. Amit, welcome to the program. Great to have you on, and thanks for your time.
No, thanks for having me, Dwayne.
So, 3 games a season for how many more years? And What's the infrastructure going to look like? There's upgrades happening for the Ballarat venue as well, I understand?
Yeah, so excitingly, a further 3 years to the term. So we'll continue to play 2 AFL home and away games there each season over each of those 3 years. But as you mentioned, we've added an AFLW game as well on each of those 3 seasons. So that's fantastic. And yeah, there's been some spectator amenities and other things being crafted over the break at the moment ahead of next year as well, which will make the experience for those attending games at Mars Stadium all the more enjoyable too.
And there's been a bit of talk about stadium infrastructure around Victoria. Do you think there is scope for a boutique 20,000, 25,000 venue in downtown Melbourne? What are your long-term plans, I suppose, with the Whitten Oval as well? I presume you're not going to try and turn that into one. What is the future for a boutique stadium in Melbourne? Is there one, or is Docklands what we've got and what we'll keep?
Yeah, I think it's more likely to be what we have now, with the ability to obviously play in areas like Ballarat or Geelong with smaller capacities. We're excitingly about to embark on the full redevelopment of VU Whitten Oval as well early in the year, just finishing off our design at the moment, but that'll be a close to $70 million transformation of the precinct with a lot of different outcomes. But certainly from a match day perspective, it'll be an enhanced experience for those coming here, but mostly around AFLW, VFL and VFLW rather than AFL games. We're pretty comfortable playing out of Marvel Stadium and obviously a couple of games at Mars Stadium as well.
Probably a question without notice, but do you think we'll ever play somewhere in a new venue in Bendigo? Will there ever be scope for another country town to get involved?
As someone who was born and raised in Bendigo, I think that'd be an outstanding thing. Watched lots of pre-season games at the Queen Elizabeth Oval growing up. But yeah, look, I think certainly with AFLW as well, there is a push to play more games regionally over time. Collingwood have played both women's home and away games, but also men's pre-season games in Gippsland as well. So yeah, I think it'd be great to get football, both men's and women's, throughout the state as well.
So speaking of Collingwood and stadium infrastructure, I'm not sure if you saw the Jeff Brown interview talking about how some profits shouldn't be shared. Where do you stand on all that, and whether the rich clubs should be with the ability to be able to spend more of what they make on themselves?
Yeah, look, I haven't got the benefit of hearing or seeing Jeff's interview, but I think the system that we have in place at the moment is a really good one. There's always opportunities for improvement, no doubt, but I think that the competitive balance policies that the AFL have put in place, both on-field and off-field, have led to a greater level of equalisation. You can see that in terms of how clubs have performed in cycles, and most teams have had an opportunity to go deep in finals in the sort of past decade or so, and that's something that wasn't being achieved previously. So I think having some form of mechanism where there is equity is important, particularly given not all clubs benefit from the same structural deals that some do. Even talking about stadium deals, clubs that play at some venues, just make a lot more money just by virtue of what they are able to do at those venues that others can't. So I think there has to be some mechanisms in place to level the playing field.
So should there be more sharing of blockbuster slots then? I mean, an Anzac Day game, for example, you'll never get the chance to play one of those at the MCG. Should there be more sharing when it comes to the big slots?
Yeah, look, I think whether it's changing some of those specific games that obviously have a lot of history and history and tradition in terms of the opponents and things like that, it may be less about changing those, but creating other opportunities for teams that don't have those games to play in those bigger games as well. I think some of that will come from on-field performance and obviously both from an AFL perspective and a broadcaster perspective, wanting better games in better slots. But I think, part of the challenge would be addressing some of those issues to make it more equitable as well.
So what slots have you asked for? Have you seen the fixture? When are we likely to see it? Have you had a glimpse at it? And what did you ask for in the new fixture? What's the preferred slot for dog fans?
Yeah, look, I think we'll receive it in the next 1 to 2 weeks. Clearly, the ongoing border challenges, as you know, from week to week, force the AFL to revisit their plans. And even from an AFLW perspective, that season's arriving a lot sooner with WA now closing its borders to SA temporarily. That's forced a bit of a rethink. So, what the last couple of years has taught us is to be a bit more patient in getting those answers. But certainly for us coming off a grand final year, we're really hopeful to get, a lot of prominent time slots, particularly at the start of the year, be it, Thursday, Friday nights. A lot of conjecture about the grand final rematch being played round one, and I know both clubs would be keen to have that, and Melbourne have pushed that specifically to host that, obviously having won the premiership. So, if we can start the season with a bang here in Melbourne and give our fans the opportunity to come and attend some big games, I think that'd be a great start for us.
Do you think that there should be unlimited footy department spend for clubs to meet? So if you want to get better doctors, the best doctors, more physios, a couple more assistant coaches, you should be allowed to get it? Or do you think you like the current cap system where you can only spend a certain amount on your football department? And even though I think it would help the development and the injury rehabilitation of some players, the equalisation methodology makes sense too.
Yeah, look, I think where a lot of the debate has rested, certainly in the last 12 months, has been about not whether the soft cap should exist or not, but what the appropriate limit should be. Obviously, post-COVID, that limit was cut back dramatically as part of a cost reset across the whole industry, and that's placed some different stresses and pressures on clubs. But I think as a philosophical proposition, a cap is absolutely needed because whilst what you say is absolutely right in terms of, a club who has the capacity would then get the best of everything, and that would then improve their program. I think the challenge then is that the gap between the clubs that can afford to do that and the clubs that can't would stretch as well, and ultimately then have on-field impact. So I think, these mechanisms are in place to ensure that clubs have an equal opportunity on-field ultimately, and fans get more excited about watching, a competition where it's open to a number of clubs winning each year rather than the model, I suppose, in some other professional sporting leagues across the globe where you sort of front up at the start of the year and it might be only 3 or 4 teams that have a genuine chance of winning given their financial capacity to spend.
You might become a big club, though, in the future, Amit. You've got, 50,000 members now that you've just tipped over or about to tip over again. You've got Werribee growing, Tarneet, Melton, Point Cook, Little River. I travel that road and, I drive down that road and there's another suburb there. So there is a chance for you guys to grow and become a big club, especially if you grab a flag in the next 2 years, which you're expecting to do as well.